Hello everyone and welcome to my oil painting class. And we are painting Fountains Abbey, some of the cloisters, a beautiful archway corridor, um, quite well preserved in Abbey. I'm interested into seeing some rhythm here. uh, would be lovely to spot some of the verticals of the columns. Okay, loads of those shapes. Perhaps some of the horizontal lines of maybe column bases. The shadows are almost horizontal, but they've got their own rhythm of a little bit of diagonals. There's some more horizontal marks, well, almost like horizontal lines of the arches as well. So it's that lovely, exciting rhythm of line. Okay, so if I wanted to interpret it in line, which I'm going to do a little bit on my gray board here as a little sample and a little test for tones, I would go, if I'll go for medium gray. So if this is going to be, oops, my white, medium, and black. We actually might have a little bit extra here. So if I were to put some fresh black on one side for my little box, and if I were to use a fresh white for a block here, right, I think I picked up a brush which doesn't quite want to. I think that's not a very good brush. Okay, so nice solid white here. I'm going to keep my gray tone in the middle, but I'm going to make an off-white darkness. Okay, so something a bit lighter than my current board. Now, if you've got a different darkness for the board, just adjust it to what you have. Okay, so that's all good. And if I were to make a slightly darker tone, but not a solid black, okay, maybe a tiny bit more lighter, then I can use one of my medium, maybe a lighter one, a darker. I'm going to go for a little darker one to sketch with, and I'll talk you through the rhythm here. Okay, so I'm happy I've got pure white, pure black, and three something in the middle. Okay, so what I was talking about, the rhythm, if this is my picture, can I plan some of these vertical lines? Yeah, those are columns. Do they have to be in specific places? Eventually they will be, but for the moment we're just seeing shapes. Okay, sorry, lines here. Okay, maybe that column is going to be nice and quite big. Yes, so just that vertical development. Maybe the width between the lines will be slightly different eventually. Yeah, so that will be quite good to see. Maybe there will be some more vertical lines somewhere here. Some more within the archway. Okay, so perhaps some of the horizontal lines. So somewhere here. It's just easier to follow that rhythm without making too precise decisions. That composition is building almost by itself. Okay, maybe that arch. So okay, some horizontal lines for the tops of the arches. So somewhere there, yeah. Perhaps something there. That diagonal direction of that rhythm and that diagonal almost turning to be close to the horizon, almost flat like. Okay, so that's exciting design is coming up just from that range of lines. Okay, so just one of the ways, one of the approaches how we can build up a composition and start thinking about that range of shapes or lines, which becoming quite balanced, yeah, and at the same time giving that energy to the painting. Now, so I've got a rough idea of the rhythm. Can I plan now a little rhythm of my light, of what I can see of sky, or that blocky light gaps? So I'm going to go for direct white, and perhaps I'll find a little rhythm of them. When we're talking about rhythm, we always compare it to music, yeah? It's almost like an instrument playing a key role, but maybe it's not much of it there, yeah? Maybe that drum is only coming up and small part of musical piece, but it's actually becoming a very important one. So maybe this will have, I'm looking at the size of these white spaces. Yes, as in volume, how big that space is and how big is the other one. So I'm just finding, okay, maybe 1, 2, 3, and that's one might be even bigger space. So we basing our composition on that emotional experience. Okay, maybe that's a bigger one. Okay, and even might be another little one here. Okay, it's almost in the center, but if I'll move it just off the center of my shapes, maybe just deliberately place it somewhere else. Okay, that's might be my column, so maybe the opposite. Move it somewhere else, deliberately further to that side. Okay, that's quite interesting, yeah? Good. So next, I might plan my other light, so this type of light, for perhaps the path and perhaps the grasses, yeah, that little lawn. So I'm approaching the painting in a different way. I'm approaching of thinking of tone and planning in a slightly different way. Okay, so let's find that light somewhere here. Just double check, might be just a tiny bit lighter so we see it better. That's it. It also makes us see shapes better than seeing outlines. Okay, that might be there. So now my whatever my rhythm of diagonal lines, now it's becoming a little bit more clearer because I'm placing the shapes. I can paint over the lines I was estimating to be. Okay, so somewhere I don't have to count every single shadow, definitely not on a little sketch here. And perhaps some of the gaps between, possibly, I might not know exactly where those gaps are yet, but that might be, if I'm squinting my eyes, I can just about see slightly light areas. Okay. Good. Next one, the two medium tones, well, the medium one we already have. This one we kind of partially have through my lines. So what I'd like to do, I'd like to work with some black and then maybe come back to this one. Might be easier for us to see it. So if I'll go for black, okay, so where do we see it? On one side of this front column. I'm only simplifying it. Yeah, it might not be eventually solid black, but it will be a very strong dark area. Okay, somewhere here. I'm going to simplify the whole perspective part of the base of the column just together for now. Okay. Make a tiny corner for it, but I just don't want to overthink it. There will be other shadows on other columns. Okay, perhaps. Okay, that's when I'll find out if my shadows are in the wrong places. Somewhere here, and perhaps some of the archways. Again, we don't have to count them, but as long as we don't put 100. How many is there? 1, 2, go down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I'll do 4, I think that will be enough for me for this little sketch. Then I might plan it better for my actual painting. This is my overall plan. I'm not worried that these shapes are of a similar widths. These are our studies, and also knowing that that is going to be adjusted. Okay, and then from here I can go a little bit more this way, and then that will come up actually somewhere here then. Okay, that will come. Good. And I can see another black looking space just above the grass here. What's under one of the arches? There's a small arch here, and below that area, maybe I've gone a bit too far, but it's going to be approximately somewhere here. Okay. Good. Perhaps a little bit of darkness in the top corner here, but it might be more of the medium, well, kind of the off black darkness. We can tweak the patterns of arches as well later on, but I think it's already getting slightly paler here. So a tiny bit more of the in between my black and the medium gray. Okay, perhaps for the spaces, the right hand side of the columns. If they will start being a little bit clashing with my black, it means that my black wasn't solid black there, which is fine for now. And it's not overly solid black there anyway. Okay, so this side of the wall. Okay, it might just mingle with that darkness in there. I did like that corner. Dark, good. Lovely depth. And perhaps also this could be the tone for my shadows, those diagonal ones. So now I can tweak them a little bit more. So they started to have a little more of a connection. There's something tiny bit more darker on the Abbey. Okay, and this shadow, which I turned a little more straighter. Everything else I'm quite happy to keep slightly paler. There will be other designs of little arches or other little spaces, windows, other little details of things, but will be less precise. Maybe even the shadow on grasses will come up, but it will be a color. We will have more varieties of tones than just 5, so we can subdivide all of that on there as well. So from identifying the rhythm of lines and perhaps a little rhythm, I think I could feel more of the rhythm of white patterns. Yeah, it's kind of guided me through to create my plan for the painting. And that's what I'll try to keep within my bigger painting. I'm going to try to keep that rhythm, keep that simplicity within the color image. Right, let's clean our brushes and let's get started on the drawing for our painting. Now, I'm using darker background, so I used acrylic paints and I mixed some little bit of white, a little bit of ochre and some violet, and it's given me that kind of a little bit more, not the bright bold violet color, but it's toned down, but that darkness will help me to sustain that medium darkness I use on my grey board. So when I'm painting, I'm starting, I can straight away look for the light. I can straight away look for the shadows. And then in between medium tone is already present. And it will help us to have that beautiful corridor being under the shadow of these lovely arches and that walkway. Okay. Right, I've cleaned my brush and I'm going to start with I think I'm just going to go for my violet. Now on my palette, I have, let me put a bit of violet here. I have some white, that was my Payne's grey, or any other black. I quite like Payne's grey, got a lovely hint of blue in it. Then I have some ochre, cadmium red, ruby or magenta or anything else pinky red you might have. Any of them will be lovely. Violet, ultramarine, cerulean blue, and olive green or yellowish type of green. Okay. So here is my diluted, diluted violet. I'm just going to check how it's going to sit on my board, which is fine. So let's do very similar division using some of the vertical lines. Now I'm using some tips so I can rub things out very easily later, move things about. Right, so let's have a look at the size of perhaps my space for the arch. Maybe there, maybe a bit shorter. Okay, so all of that, I'm just going to do approximate sizes, approximate gaps in between them. And then I can find this big column. It's a little bit less space we have of what's left spaced between the column and the next one. I'm not sure where the next one is. Yeah, maybe much more further away. But on our photograph, that space is a little bit shorter or approximately similar to this one. So that's going to be my space. Maybe my column is going to be about that wide. So let's have a look. That's going to be too big. Okay. Next space is reasonably slender. Okay, and then the other column is here. Okay, one column, another one, and then the columns don't have spaces in between them. So again, I'm not going to count the columns. If I would have had a really large canvas and I've got plenty of space to find all the details, here I'm going to just more represent a rhythm of them all. So let's just tweak Oh, let's just make that decision of perhaps tiny bit thinner for this column. So that's why we're doing those verticals. Okay, that will evaporate and it will look drier. Will look lighter space. Okay, maybe that's going to be my gap. That's going to be my next column. Okay, but it's not going to be so big, so that's going to be my big arch for that space. So that might give me an opportunity to consider that space, and then maybe the space at the back, that little box. And that one is going to be somewhere here in that little box, big box. Okay. And then I can connect those two corners. Or you can just create your own using maybe a diagonal, just using the brush or any long object ruler, pencil, just to use the approximate diagonal. Using these capitals in the corner here, if I'll drag that diagonal, yeah, that might give me an opportunity to see this one, maybe just a little bit higher. Okay, it might be a little bit taller here. Oh, that's better. But that's my perspective sorted. And for this wall, we're almost standing on that straight line. I suppose I could put a very, very slight angle here. A very tiny linear, yeah. Depends on how wall this stands out. But all these marks on the wall will still be vertical and we still see things in here. So we can't quite see what's happening on the wall from our shadow. So it tells me that it's almost straight. And then, okay. Right, so what can we have a look here? Next, so my other arches, I can play with the shapes, okay, approximately, and then we can adjust them to the needed columns. So all the arches will start on this left-hand side line, but they all will start being slightly further away, slightly bigger, slightly wider. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we needed 5. So something like that. Now they approximately for me ended up being of a similar gaps. So that's where I can tweak it. Okay, so maybe 1 is going to be most, a space between the arches will be, so maybe the largest one. Okay. The 2 furthest away will be the most close to each other. Can't quite see the details around them. This is how to draw shapes in perspective without over worrying about them, without overthinking. Plus our lines are so wide, plus minus the width of my brush is almost a centimeter. Yeah, and the strokes come out maybe not a centimeter wide, but reasonably big. So that precision is not there. So I just want you to think of it as approximate shapes and you'll do it better. Right, so 1, 2, okay, that's the one I needed. 3, maybe somewhere here. And maybe this one even still lower. Fall. Okay. Well, that will be good. And the arches will have beautiful reflective color in different places with different space. Just going to make them slightly more round at the top and land more carefully into the wall or into the column space. That's why I didn't want to draw the columns yet. The arches will determine our connection with columns. Okay. Good, good, good. And there might be even 6, so I can count 6 columns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then it's a 7 one. So have I miscalculated my arches? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, it's 6. So the other tiny one at the back, I might just add a tiny baby one. If you wanted one, you probably have plenty anyway. It's not a big deal whatsoever. So that rhythm is going to be very exciting. So I'm going to create shadows now by just continuing, just using the arches as continuation of the shadow on the column. Okay, so that's going to be that one. That's going to be that one. And probably just from here, we'll be able to see this side of our base for the column. Okay, so that gives me an opportunity to start putting all the horizontal little shapes for them there. This could be a bit lower. And this larger one, it's going to be somewhere here as a box. And then that lovely diagonal we put for the path, it will be the same direction for the column's base. Okay, if the base for the first column, okay, if this is my whole column here, it's going to be too far, is almost halfway through my column, that corner. For the other corners, it shrinks. We only see a little bit of it, or in some cases, we only see mainly the side of. That's why I just put a horizontal line for most of them. So that side will almost disappear. Okay, and that one was a gap. So that's a column, that's a column. Everything else is a column, but that's a gap. Okay. Good. What other things we can add? We can put our shadows. I'm going to start with that second column shadow, and I'm going to maybe just gently change its angle to a little bit more flatter one, so then I can see more of the shadow from my closest column. Okay, so then I can just about see that one there. Okay, I can even paint it a little bit darker so we know what we're looking at. And the other shapes will be just the width of a stroke. Somewhere there. Just double check that my vertical lines are vertical. I think this one a little bit wobbled. And that will show I've got that side and this side, and that side and that side, and that side wobbled as well. Okay, good. You can see a little bit of details through my arch, but they're quite small. I think I'm going to go there straight away with some of the colors and some of the lighter spaces. But for this corner, I can plan my structure a little bit more. So for example, if I were to find the grass line, yeah, or where the other row of columns are going to be. So that will just give me a little bit of space. Okay, and that might be just about there. And then we have one bigger column and the beautiful arch. I might just go for that lovely arch, which has been cropped. Okay. That column is quite lovely there as well. And something behind it is going different, maybe a little lower. Maybe all of it could be just a tiny bit lower. And again, there is another arch. We'll see loads of greens through it, but it will give us that little resting point from loads of stone color. We'll have a little bit of green. We'll see more space for them as windows, yes, as open spaces. Right, there's an open in there, but it also clashes with probably an old window, so it looks like a slope. But just keeping it as an open space will be fine because it will create a shadow there. I'm happy with that. And if we see some texture on the stone a bit more vertically here, in our little gap, we see more of the that perspective of a similar kind. That will be a line for another row of columns at the back, or another row, or another just generally line. And I can see a shape of an arch somewhere here as well. Will be more color-based shapes. There's a tiny little window again there. And that's where my little white gap is going to be. Right, my other white larger gap is going to be here. Okay, how do we find it? Most of our arches are really solid, so we can't quite see the opening through them. If you stand underneath of them, you will. but we have a space, bit of a vertical wall, and for whatever reason that is, which we can't see exactly how the building is stepping down, we can see just about that space of light there. Okay, and this arch will almost stop here, and there's a broken wall, so I'll have a warmer color and a cooler color there, but again that will come much easier to us when we start painting. Right, and I think I'm going to stop on my drawing here. Right, now we're ready to start adding color. Like in our tonal study, let's start with our lighter tones. Let's start with our, shall we call them whites? Yes, so the most light tones, and then perhaps look at the next tone, maybe that 20%, yeah, to 30% of light for our path and grasses. Now, when I'm looking at my whites on the photograph, they do look very white. My camera just can't pick up blue when I'm in the shadow, yeah? So I'm going to paint those whites with pale blue, okay? So here's my fresh white. Now I'm going to use my 3 oils mixture. Okay, and I'm going to go for cerulean blue. Now, this is not light, okay? If I were to compare it here, it's probably somewhere in between, okay? But I can make it as a little stroke within my shape. I can make it tiny bit lighter, or definitely the two shapes below could be a little bit paler, but something quite high up. I want to see some of the blue there. Otherwise, my sky will just look overcast and quite dull. Now, what also is going to happen is my violet outlines will start giving me a darker tone. So I will actually persevere using a little bit more white. Okay, so that's my darker tone, slightly darker one, yeah, and then I'm gonna go for a hint of paler white, maybe it's a bit of a cloud, maybe there's something else in there, but it has more than just one darkness within it, yeah. 2 will be plenty. If you do more, don't overdo it, but gently there. Okay, that's wanted a bit darker, and it's ended up being a tiny bit lighter here in the top. I think it's just a stroke reflecting. Okay, another light patch was here. Okay, because it's getting even higher, it could have tiny bit more blue as a little area somewhere there. I can shrink it if it's too big. I prefer to paint it slightly bigger now because I can always shrink it later. And then I have a big area here. And again, this is an overall starting point, darkness, and then I can go for fresher white. Watch out, maybe where if I wanted to paint some trees, can just stop just on their border, or maybe just even ignore the trees. You might want to paint it to the wall. Okay, something there. As it's quite a big shape, can I put something even paler there? Again, there might be a little cloud there or a little hint of light. So it's overall the shapes reads light. Okay, I know at the moment they all read very light because we haven't got anything else in there, but it will remain reading quite pale because there are components of white or very pale blue within those areas, right? So here I haven't drawn anything, but I can see there is a lighter shape against my archway. Okay, so that's going to be there. It's more of a longer shape, and there are some trees below it, so somewhere there. Okay, if I'm smudging my violet lines, I need to patch it up. And there is a smaller one, half of the window, part of the window. I'm going to make a slightly bigger shape of light first, with the plan of shrinking it with colors coming close to it. I think it will be easier for me to shrink it. It's going to go a little bit more towards the left. Yeah, so somewhere there. Good. And one could be a little bit lower than the other window as well. And again, can I put tiny bit of fresher white in there? Maybe as a little dab. We might see it, we might not, but visually it will start recognizing without, even if we don't pick it up consciously, subconsciously, we'll start seeing it a little bit more. Quite like this one. Might just put something else in there. Good. Right, so step 1 is done. Let's do step 2 with our path. So I'm going to clean my brush, wipe it. I usually wipe it on the tissue first, then I clean it a little bit more in tips, and then wipe it again, and I can use it straight away. And now I can have a bit of oil on it. Let's have some fresh white. Okay, just going to work that white, titanium white, with my oil, so it's lovely and soft. It's not so thick and chunky. Okay, and then I can have small amount of ochre. Okay, that's a reasonably small amount, but very strong. Okay, so I might need more white to compensate for it, and also to make it less yellowish, but a little bit more path-like. I'm going to have a minuscule amount of violet. It just will make it not gray, not brown, but less fresh yellow in appearance. Okay, and by adding a little bit more of that white, we'll see that violet just less fresh. If I'll have mainly ochre and white, it almost appears lovely and golden, when violet just adds that less fresher color. Right, so let's have that paint. Well, it's lovely saturated with yellowish tone. I'm going to put it at the front for my light. Might even put a tiny bit more violet here. And as the color will progress further, my color will become a little bit more bleached. I'll have tiny bit more white there, right at the back of that corridor. That will be our aerial perspective, so close to us are more saturated in pigment, yeah, stronger yellow, stronger violet, and the further away, or they're getting more bleached, yeah, and there is more white in them, that air, or they will be becoming much more less warmer, less heated, and a little bit more cooler. Okay, so that's going to be approximately somewhere here. I haven't quite worked out perfectly its silhouette yet, but looking at the shape, that should be okay. It might just give me a little hint of turning point, a little hint of light for the turning point there. So painting shapes, and then we can tweak other things, right? Let's go further away with this light. So my paint is going reasonably thick now. The reason I need the paint being thick, I'm applying it flattish. It's not chunks of paint, but it's not runny because my violet background is very dark, and more diluted paint, diluted strokes, will show that darkness. So if I want to paint light, which I am doing now, I need to apply that area with a thicker paint. Okay, some of that. And again, if I needed to tweak the corners there, I haven't quite played them out yet. If my shadow will need to tweak a little bit, if the base of the column I just need to tweak a little bit. Yeah, it might be just gently relocating now. That could be done. Okay, and as I'm getting further up, I'm adding a tiny bit more white. Okay, tips, not is the wrong thing. I want my oil. The volume of white is increasing, but we shouldn't see it abruptly changing. Okay, and here I'm just going to do a couple of lines representing approximate light plane in there. And then I'll paint more of the space we see without that arcade, without that row of columns and arches over it. Some of there, but it's ended up for me being not whitish as I wanted. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add fresh white to my brush. And now I know the area I want it to be painted. I'll just have to go over it. And that extra white will mix with my palette, sorry, with my painting color, and will make it lighter, less ochre-like as well. Okay, good. While we're on this color, I might use a little extra oil. I want to put maybe a highlight or two on our columns, but if I'll go with runny or very soft paint in its consistency, then the color is not going to appear the same. Plus, I'm not going to use the same volume of it. On our second column, so this is the first one, on this second one, you can see just a little highlight. It's also this stage of our painting. It will just show us that that is a column and the space next to it is a gap. Okay, this is getting a very wide line, but again, it's easier to do a wide line earlier on and then shrink it after. I'm going to clean my brush and I'm going to smudge its left-hand side. That will give me a feel of the column now and its border. Has a bit more of that sharpness of the border. Again, clean my brush. It's not a big deal of that shading, but visually I'm recognizing that space a bit better now. If I wanted to touch up the straightness here, I can just use a clean brush and more or less correct it there. Okay. But it's quite round. It is round, partially round. Okay. The next light for us was the light on the grass. Now I can paint all of the grass pale, but there is no need for it really yet. Now we know all of the grass will stand out because of color. Now I can focus on my highlights of the grass. So this time I'll need my olive green, which is quite a yellowish green in Georgian paints. Okay, I can use a little bit of ochre, olive green, and I think it will be a quite transparent color if I place it on my board. So a little bit of white. I think I need more green. Will be a better version. Okay, if it doesn't look bright enough, I need more white. Let me squeeze a bit more white. And sometimes olive green could look quite yellowish. Definitely it's looked yellowish on my screen in the past. So in that case, you can always add a hint of cerulean blue to that, just to have that more of a hint of stronger green than yellow in it. So I want a little bit of white and olive green. I think that's looking good. Let's just place it in the environment again. Okay, that's bolder. That's bolder, lovely light. You can see that shape somewhere here. We can't see why we have that light. What type of cast shadows are around it, but I'm gonna keep it in that bulky space. That's good. Again, I can always shrink it. I prefer to do it a little bit bigger. There's perhaps another little mark of light. Maybe another one. I'm going to put a slightly bigger one, a couple of gaps of green there. But I'll put them all together first, and when I'll start doing the shadows, I can make a decision to subdivide this area with the bigger grass patch or not. And perhaps a similar light right at the back, which will go horizontally, meeting our path on that little horizon line. If there will be shadows, will be so minor. We're not going to see much. Okay, while we're on the green, we can do our shadow. Okay. And this time I will use my cerulean blue with my color mixed from olive green. And already here I can see a lovely contrast, which should do. I think that should be quite nice. If I'll put slightly darker green next to my light, and then further out I can go slightly perhaps lighter green or less saturated with bluish green. Yeah, so let's put a bit more contrast color next to our highlights on the grass. Okay, and then I can just paint the rest. I just double check that my column is straight, or maybe it's needed to be straightened higher up. Okay, more of a plain pattern of green. I'll still have tiny bit of cooler green next to my pattern. I think that's better. Can you see how different that is? I'm not gonna leave it so abruptly, that color. I'll put it on next to my light. I think that's what I wanted to do, and it just smudged and been absorbed by my green. Okay, that's better. And now I can blend it out. That's better. That's much better. It gives it extra glow. And for the small areas, we can just use one green. We don't have to have loads of green, so perhaps I will divide that light. Again, I'm just going for a pattern, and the column shape base of it probably will fit in. There's also a bit of extra stone line around, so it doesn't have to be adjusted perfectly. All sorts of factors are around. Okay, and perhaps a tiny bit of green of some sort at the back. The trees at the back are slightly cooler, but they're not overly light. So if I were to add a little more cerulean blue and a dab of white, because I don't want it to be too dark, it becomes almost like turquoisey, just off turquoise. There's a bit of warmth from ochre still there, but it's less yellowish green. Okay, let's just test that one. Somewhere there, maybe a tiny bit more lighter. Still. Okay. Somewhere there. Maybe making it less perfect. Maybe creating a little more of an edge. That's it. And something similar for the gap next to our opening here, but I might put a small amount of ochre into my green because it's closer to us, it's got more strength of color, got more saturation in there. Okay, so I can even paint the whole gap through the window first. And then I can add a hint of extra light at the top. That will merge nicely. I can use similar light for my greens above. Okay, and I can add a little shadow. I'm going to go for more direct cerulean blue, and it will mix with my green, but will give me a lovely shadow. Yeah, so it just looks a nice range of greens here. Sometimes certain strokes are less successful than others, so that's what I'll just do a little tweak on. If I want to have some of the treetops against the sky, a little more sun and air touched, can have a tiny dab of paler color, just add a bit more white to it. That looks better, yeah? It doesn't look so dark as a silhouette. Maybe even something a little paler here. Okay, So it's not direct sunlight, but there is some light. Talking about that sunlit area below that window, looks like that almost past color. I might put a slightly lighter window ledge. If we just put the whole area darker, it wouldn't be wrong, but that might be a little interest point of some sort. Maybe a little of interest point around the window. Okay. Good. So those are my groups of lights, more or less completed. If I were to tweak some of more lights, there will be on top of my medium tones, so I might need to work on them first before define some of those highlights. So next, we're going to start looking at our more of the medium grays to dark ones. Still on the lighter side of it, let's spot some highlights of the, well, not highlights, those paler versions. We can see some cooler color behind those arches. Yeah, what's facing the sky more, what's more exposed to the sky more. That gap between the columns, that looks quite cool. And maybe that just next to that arch on the side. So anything behind our columns or above our arches, okay? Everything else under will have much more warmer color and possibly darker as well. So I think I need a bigger brush now. So I'm less fiddly with a small brush. I'm going to use a slightly bigger one. I'm still on the filbert brush. So let's have some oil. Let's have white as our base color again. Okay, I'm going to mix it with a little bit of ochre, so I'm going to stay in the same area where my earlier ochre was. I don't need a lot of ochre, maybe a small amount. Ochre can be quite a powerful color, but remember, if we mix ochre with cerulean blue, we're going to have a green. But if we mix it with ultramarine, okay, that's quite a lot of ultramarine, we'll have something not quite a, maybe more of a grayish green, yeah, or grayish blue. Depends what proportion of ochre you're going to have. So smaller volume of ochre, more of the blue color in there. So I'm going to test in darkness where that color is. That's almost matches that darkness here. Let's place it against my background. Will it look paler, but still darker around my sky? I think that's will be quite nice. Okay. And I can also go with slightly more blue with very little ochre in it, or maybe just this, my first color mix, and then ultramarine with less fresher combination of white. Okay, that would be good as well. So start looking a bit more cooler rather than greenish. Okay, so that's any variations of these colors would be wonderful. They're very close in darkness. If one is tiny bit more darker than another, it's very, very, very minuscule amount, and that's as totally permissible. Okay, and I want to paint it perhaps to up to this line. Okay. I'm going to keep that vertical line straighter. There are some indents, so there's a bit more darkness there, a little bit more light in there, something else there. Can I just paint it flat first, so we actually see that shape first? Okay, so under this arch, we see a little bit more of that space again. Well, it's a different compartment, different zone, but let's just block it. So we start recognizing that color separate from a warm color. We can tweak sub colors within it afterwards. Okay, and a little bit more left here. I'm leaving reasonable space for my arches still, that width, that ceiling of the arch. If my shapes are still wobbly, I'll tweak them when the actual arch will come up. Okay, a little bit more somewhere here. Tiny bit, if any, somewhere else, somewhere at the back. Okay. You can see a little bit of that color here as well. I think I might have painted my arch a bit too low. Well, might be just or maybe I'll bring it a tiny bit low after. Right, so this color is standing up to almost like a vertical, is part of that flat surface above the arch, and then that's the column there. So that's how I'm going to separate it. That's going to be the width, the ceiling of the column, which I'm keeping blank for the moment. If you paint a bit more, that's okay. We can tweak it later. Okay. And perhaps just to connect that color, I'll drop it gently somewhere here to give me an idea that will be the border of my column. It's way too light for the shadow, but there's a little bit of paler, medium darkness. That coolness might be just enough hint of it. And I'm going to go for more white and fresher ultramarine, but not dark. I want to go for a lighter version. Again, my brush is not clean, so small proportion of ochre from these colors will travel within my bristles. That's the effect I want to have. Not just clean, fresh ultramarine, but a hint of it present. And the colors I want are for my gaps between the columns. Now, the tricky part here is that my wall could start clashing with the light on the sky. So if I were to bring tiny bit more lighter tone to the sky here, and perhaps just for this area, it might be a cloud, there might be something else. Okay, I still wanted it a little bit darker there. And I can also make this color for the wall tiny bit more darker at the border next to the sky. But the rest, I think it would be good to have a paler tone. Yeah, we're still on that range of, okay, it's a little bit lighter. So I can go tiny bit more darker here. Mixing with my other colors. Okay, a bit too dark. And also we use cerulean blue for the sky. Now we've got ultramarine, so it's a different blue, plus obviously ultramarine is mixed with a bit of ochre, so it shouldn't give us the color clash. Okay, I might leave tiny bit of space for possibly warmer window. If you forget or paint over it, just keep on going. It's fine. Okay, that's a little extra blue. Again, if in doubt, just paint the whole area here up to the top of the arch, within that opening, the same flat shape, same flat color. We can tweak the nuances after. I think that's what I'll have to do. Otherwise, it's starting to be a bit patchy. Okay, there's a little bit of coolness under the arch, perhaps. I haven't tweaked the vertical line for my shadow, so my rhythm of verticals will have to be tweaked. I think it's all over the place at the moment. I'll sort it out after, and I'll use some of this color for the last and largest area here on the right, and perhaps tiny bit more blue. Don't want it to be too dark, but again, I can come back and make it a bit paler. If I'll make it too dark, I wouldn't have enough darkness to go further into my other darks. Yeah, so I need it to be, so my current blue is somewhere here. So I'm on the right track with that. Right, anything else? A little paler version of my blue-green, blue and ochre. Called it green, but it's not quite green really. Kind of more of a silvery blue. I can put over this window here. And also there is a little bit of hint of it, but paler version for the building at the back. It's got more warmth in it, but there's still a little bit of coolness. If I'll put a couple of marks of coolness in there, then the rest could be painted warmer. Okay. And just to touch that area at the back and keep it warm, I'm going to be back to my ochre. A little bit of ultramarine from my palette, tiny bit more ochre. Okay, that's quite a lot. Let's have more white. Again, it's becoming more of a neutral color between the blue and the yellow. Well, the yellow ochre. Grayish, a little bit more warmer color. And if I were to paint it over, I need to, the rest of my arch, it needs to appear darker than my sky. So if that's not gonna happen with my current darkness of the color, I'll add a hint of violet to it. Okay, again, back to a tiny bit of blue, something. So it's becoming like a darker version of my ochre. That's better. So it stands out darker than my sky in that corner. Little blue patches, little blue strokes will smudge with my new ochre strokes and will give me enough variety of color and suggestion. Okay, I haven't got many shadows in there. Again, this is something could be edited later. For now, it's just showing an overall silhouette. Now I can do tiny tweaks to that darkness by adding a hint of violet and a hint of ultramarine. And as we have a lot of paint there already, we can quite comfortably go straight away into that, and the paint will blend with existing strokes, with existing volume of paint. Okay, just a little some variety. Maybe more blue then. violet. But nothing too strong. The contrasts of color and the contrast of darkness will need to be appearing in front of us, not far back. Okay, I think that might be enough. Can I use a similar ochre just to add in a couple of places? Yeah, it just will give me tiny bit of variation. That's a stroke, as that's a window, is that's a little bit of patch of different stone, and it just been weathered differently. And a hint more white. Where's ochre? Just want to see a little bit here of something. And then I can paint, excuse me, the rest of the wall. We see behind, we can see tiny bit of light under the arch in that space because it's in the shadow, but we see the light because there is a little bit of reflective surface. So probably the grass, the path underneath of it is probably really lit up with strong light. But I will touch it slightly darker with some violet and ochre, violet and perhaps cadmium red in a moment. That's a lovely combination with cadmium red or cadmium orange. Either of the variations of cadmium will be good. I just do a little bit of touch up of color in there. A little suggestion for the archway. A little suggestion for top of the window. Maybe it's quite strong. Can always tone it down. The red against the blue will always come out strong. Okay. It's quite a nice line, but it doesn't show on your... Okay, it's better. You can see how dark that line is, yeah? Perhaps that space behind as well. I think I'm going to go for slightly brighter orangey color, mix from oak and cadmium red. Oh, that's a lovely bold. Just that tiny bit of extra light will give us that wonderful connection. While I've got it, I can see where I can place it elsewhere in my painting. That rhythm of the orange, the rhythm of that orangey red, that reflective surface from under shapes. Might even put a little exaggerated version of it here. Okay, and I can see a lovely power of it right here for the furthest away arch space. It mixes with my violet line, so I might put it stronger, bolder, not too light, but that shimmering little hint of it is very exciting, where it might be also appearing later. Okay, just slightly that spinning effect. And again, just playing with that color, how it's just coming from one of our back walls to a bit bolder versions. Oh, lovely, juicy, juicy and powerful. So that's where our rhythm of verticals will be played at. Okay, doesn't have to go all the way from top to bottom of the columns, but might be just a little appearance and then it will stop. Just within some of those shadows. Okay, good. And again, anywhere else a slightly darker version. Just having a hint of violet with it and maybe a bit of pinky red. So then the darkness could increase, but the red still remain. I haven't cleaned my brush, so my cadmium red is still there. Just thinking of putting a little more deeper, more purple-like hint of color for the wall at the back. I've got a lovely shadow in there. So I'm prepping a bit of color before it's become a solid shadow. We can make it darker at any point, but the color entered first will give the strength to that shadow after. Okay, that's good. Good, good, good. Right, and perhaps a slightly paler version of it. I want to still finish my space between columns, so let's do a paler version. What's not painted here? Let's fill it in. Okay, and any streaks or any indents of that rusty texture might be just a little coming here and there. Okay. Anything on this wall? Sometimes adding a fresh, kind of that rusty, beautiful orangey red color over the blue spoils things. So apply it with caution and be prepared to go over it with a little bit of pale blue later. It needs to be kind of seen within environment. Okay, I'm happy with that. For now, so lots of broken things at the moment, but the unity of those orange strokes still slowly put things together. Right, let's bring that one a little more together rather than two separate. Okay, good. Right, next step will be identifying a little bit of light on our columns and their shadows. So the spaces behind them are seen quite strongly. So how do we do that? Right, for the next stage, I'm going to use my 3 oils and I'm going to paint all of my background, what's still violet, with that oil. So it's going to be a damp surface, or at least most of it, some big chunks of that violet. So we can have a slightly a runnier paint to go over these areas. We'll paint quickly as well. Might just do a tiny bit here, but for the small areas, I'm not going to do it because it's not as practically easy to do. And it will be too runny for us to do anything to paint those areas. I'll do it more precisely when I actually apply color. So just applying some oil here. Okay, shadows are okay. They could stay as they are. I don't need to apply anything over them, but the columns, the two bigger columns and the wall on the left-hand side, those are the main places. So the reason for it is that I can start bringing color and using my background violet as an exciting top up to my colors. Anything here? Yeah, I can paint this one as well. Although it's well, maybe that shadow could be painted there. Okay, not too much. That's fine. So I need to top up my oil here as well. Okay, and let's use a larger brush for our shadows. We're going to do a bit of shadows and a bit of light. So I'm going to go for some violet, more runnier version of it, and some of my ultramarine. Okay. If it starts looking quite blue, well, I can test it. I can test it here. That's quite exciting blue. But if it starts looking too similar blue here and there, I can always have tiny bit of red with it. But I think that might be just enough. Let's start with where we placed our very dark, our black color. So a little bit here, but I might just make it runny and almost diluted. So I'll do some more variations here. But those are becoming exciting strokes. Taking most of my paint away. So let's get some more. Let's apply some of that darkness here. That's when I was talking about, do I need to have my arch slightly lowered? And I can afford dropping it slightly lower. Okay. Tricky part is it's reflecting quite a bit for me. I'm glad it's not reflecting on the screen. Slightly more darker tone here will give us a beautiful contrast with the paler colors of that stonework we painted. And I can go for more concentrated paint, and in some places I'll use that runny oil we applied to dilute the color and have just a little paler hint of it. Yeah, look how it's beautifully blended there. So there's a little bit of paler version of it, and that is a bit more solid. Okay, that could be a tiny bit more solid here. And maybe even this orange could be partially absorbed. Okay, something happening there, excitingly. Right, bit of fresh paint. Let's go further down. Again, anything slightly darker. Okay, that's looking very solid because I didn't have any oil here. Okay, so I'll leave it there for the moment and then I'll come back to it. Now, in the areas between those zones, I have got some darkness, but maybe not as much light as I have left so far. So I might just use a little bit of oil on my brush and bring some softness to that area by bringing a little bit of my mixed violet and ultramarine, just giving some possibility of variation of color and change of darkness as well. Also will give me an opportunity to soften that super dark shadow under the arch, which I just placed because there was no oil there. Okay, that's more interesting. Okay, good. I'm quite happy with the arches below. I just put a small amount of darkness in there. I don't want to over spoil them. But what I will do, I will put a hint of diluted darker paint for some of the maybe verticals, maybe a little bit of that patchy, so it doesn't just all stay perfectly pale blue. That's better. It's something there, but not overly significantly overwhelming. Okay, that's actually gone up too much. So that vertical mark making is present for the light, for that maybe that vertical wall. So that could come here a bit more as a wall, as a partially collapsed wall, possibly windows, possibly other things. Okay, can't see that. But it might, doesn't have to be there. Okay. We like soft and sharp borders. So if I've got a sharp border, yeah, around this opening, can I have a little bit of softness in some place as well? And then there's some sharpness. I've got that sharp edge on the border of the arch. Can I have a little bit of softness there somewhere as well? Oh, that's smudged quite nicely. Accidentally smudged quite nicely. Okay, so if any of your orangey little blocks will be stretched over, smudged, that would be wonderful. So don't be scared of using your finger, your brush, bordering color. Okay, look at that lovely light. I'm really happy with that. How did I do that? Just smudged a bit of here and there and not overthinking about it. Good, right, let's do some shadows on the columns. Same, bit of blue, bit of violet, probably a bit more blue than violet. And let's start with this bigger shadow. Okay, not enough color. And let's go for, I will have to tweak its size and shape as well. I think it's leaning a little bit for me. So I need to straighten it up. It's tiny bit of perhaps the capital here. Okay, I'm gonna go partially over my orange. Just gonna double check. I think I could go even further here out. Okay, don't expect you to do a straight line all the way, but sometimes doing a little bit and stepping away and a little bit and stepping away. Okay. And then I'm gonna do another one somewhere here. And then I'm going to mingle a few things and see how the colors will start blending, interacting. Smudging. This is quite exciting, yeah. Okay, that column a little bit standing out. Just don't want that blue being overly solid. And perhaps some places, remember we like having some softness. Although that's a very pronounced big shape, but that's a column which is close to us. So I think that would be quite nice to have a little bit of variety there. Next larger column, but small in size. I'm going to keep it a bit more simple. Maybe paint just over, sorry, just on the sides of that lovely, beautiful orange. See how it will smudge. That's giving a beautiful glow. Okay, and I think that runniness, it's create that three-dimensional effect for me here on its own. Quite like that glow. Again, very much almost repeating, almost like if we would have had some candle lights, yeah, from the old days of the abbots and having the roof over would have been much more darker place. Okay, so that's giving me a little more playfulness with the shadows. Good. Can I put a similar runny blue violet for my other shell? I'm just checking any other darks I've missed. So maybe that area could have extra dark tones. So easy to do it at the bottom. So maybe I'll start it from the bottom area there. And because it's again runny paint, we see violet from underneath. We see other colors if we're smudging up, just bordering them. Okay, maybe this will just give me a little bit of a border if I'm not too heavy-handed here. And perhaps even this area could be slightly darker. And that lovely stone over the arch looks more silvery blue. Again, if it's too bright, just little smudges of the shape or its borders will tweak them. That's it, that's more suggestive rather than too precise now. Okay, any of our shadows or darks for the bases of the columns, the bases of the building, and the far back. Yeah, something here again, that rhythm of horizontal lines. We've done it through the arches. Any little standing out hints of, yeah, remember we've done that little line for the capitals of the side of the columns. They're just a little bit standing out. Where they link too much, I can always smudge them. Or increase in some other ones. Okay, good. Quite like the idea of maybe putting tiny bit of darkness here at the bottom of the wall on the left-hand side. Maybe a small amount, not too much. And by the time I add a bit more warmth to it, I think that should be good. Good. Anything else? I think that will be all fine here. Right, and let's block our light for the columns. So now we need to make our violet, the remaining of the violet, covered with something paler and warmer. I'm gonna this time going still for runny paint, but so this is my oil there. But I'm gonna go small amount of white, not huge as though we're using it for shadows or for the light on the path or for the sky, but just a little bit of it there. I'm gonna go for some ochre as the base color. Okay, still need to make sure that it's runny. I'm a bit actually worried it is quite runny and don't want it to run on my painting. A bit of cadmium red. Okay. That's a lovely, lovely color. That was similar to what we were using before, but this time it's runny. And I'm gonna go for a hint of violet. Now I'm gonna start with this runnier color first, and then I will be adding slightly thicker paint to that. So let's just start maybe from a big area somewhere here. Okay, look at that gorgeous color. It will settle in. Sometimes it might even run. I've got quite a good angle on my board here. So it might even, the oil might separate and have little streaks. Let's add a hint more cadmium red to that. And I'm going to mix it with my previous colors here and give it a lovely wacky smudge. Okay, that's interacting beautifully. Okay. I might just put a tiny bit of light here so it's not too much. Okay, good. Maybe a line coming a tiny bit more through, but it's just a little options of showing the wall. Okay. Now by doing that, I've spotted I've got quite a bit of space here left. Can I paint it a tiny bit more? Where's my red and violet? Okay, just coming through some of my arch here. Just feels right to add it up here. Right. And let's go again for slightly lighter, that runny paint. All of this area. Let's just block it. Almost block how we were trying to block the runny wash. Okay. And then when you meet other colors, or that runnier dark blue wash with violet, yeah, just gently press on the brush gently and let it partially overlap and partially smudge. Okay, and just see what's going to happen there. Okay. That's quite exciting. And let's come a bit more here. We will use tiny bit more solid paint on top of these as well, so don't over worry. Okay, I've got a capital which is a little bit wider here, so I might go slightly further out. I can tweak my columns widths here. That's gonna be tiny bit of a shadow. I'm just gonna identify that little mark to give me a reference for where it's standing out. Okay. And then I'm back to my color. Smudge, smudge, smudge. Drag if needed. Okay. Quite like how it's balances back to that paler blue. It clashes with my space at the back, but I can put more of a highlight here later. Just gonna double check. I have got a straighter line here. Okay, good. And then this side, and perhaps even tiny bit more ochre and white here. I think it's a big area. We can go for a little paler color immediately here. So it's a little bit more open here as well. So I'm going to tweak the outline for the column. said Julia, and went very wobbly. Because it's quite a lovely oily surface. Okay, so that is now going to be more of a unity of a shape. Okay. Suggestion of sub-column. Another sub-column there. You don't have to tell everything in detail there. Just less perfect shape. Don't want to tell more interesting details for the stonework. Maybe, maybe not. It's up to you. But it still looks quite dark. But it's getting more effective. Okay, I'm going to wipe my brush now from all that runny oil. And I'm going to load it with fresh white and some ochre. And perhaps a little bit of my pinky red. Okay. So we'll have more of a peachy rather than orangey color. And that will be a thick paint for extra highlights. Remember, we were placing a little bit of light somewhere here. Let's see if some of that will sit here. Okay, it doesn't sit well at the bottom, so I might just stretch it over and have more of a suggestion on it. This tiny bit of light somewhere here. Maybe persevering slightly more. Rather than dragging the color all the way, I'm dotting it about. Okay, how about slightly thicker paint? And it's different to enter that thicker paint on a runny surface. Yeah, on the runny layer. So going over it a couple of times is becoming effective. And also the plan is just going to put a couple of more shapes of similar color here. The plan is to get it tiny bit more integrated, maybe a little bit more smudged. Maybe now I can drag the color around it a bit more. Yeah. You start to have more of an evenness. Don't want it even. If some of it is a bit more shinier than another area, a bit more light in another areas, that's all fantastic. But it's giving more of a straight column look. And where I'm stopping and starting my strokes, that will show unevenness of the stone it's made from. Yeah, will kind of suggest that light. I also want to put a little bit of warmer light, those on our little horizontal strokes. I'm not going to follow every column here. I'm going to just keep it very suggestive and playful. Good. Any other light from that slightly thicker paint? I think I can bring it a little bit more here, playful, and just put few playful strokes. Okay, maybe that light's going to strike a shape here, maybe a bit more here. Let's see how this area goes. Okay, and even possibly, I think I quite like how it's looking here, but maybe a tiny bit of light could be just on the wall. Remember from the shadows, from the highlights, it might be just catching in a couple of areas. And that might just correspond to some presence of that light here. Or it might be picking up some exposed stone texture, wall texture. mortar texture. Okay, that's good. Anywhere else of a similar kind of light? I think that arch lost a little bit of light for me. Can I just make it spin a bit more by placing extra tiny bit more here? Good, 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 good. Now, quite a lot of darker tones to what I wanted. I think my paler blues on the spaces between my arch, between my columns could be slightly lighter. And then I also want to touch my shadows here. Shadows will be quick. Let's do the shadows first. A little bit of coolness, but I'm gonna pick up a hint of my orangey color. So just to put more of a less violety look, but unity for the shadows. Could have a little more warmth in some of their middle parts. Okay. Quite watery paint, so it's easy to apply, and it's also shows our violet color underneath. For the distant areas, I don't think I need it. If there are loads of uneven spaces of darkness here, I can just tweak it a little bit and again keep it more suggestive. If the area gets covered with too much darkness, maybe there is some obstruction there. Yeah, so I've just painted a little extra shadow here. I needed to tweak things, or I can paint it, tweak it with some highlight. I think I'm going to keep it as it is. I think I might just imagine there's something extra pile of stone in that area, something obstructed that space. Okay, that's good, good, good. Down a bit of darkness feels it could do at the back. Right, and a hint of paler light for a couple of these walls. Now I can see where we are with overall darkness. So my white, back to my ultramarine. I can go paler because there is plenty of paint on the surface of my painting, and it will keep my painting darker overall together. That's better. That's a lovely grayish look here. And where I haven't painted my wall here, but still see a bit of violet, I'm going to enter that paler blue as well. Cool off some of the orange by placing the blues again will look quite nicely as a silver. That's lovely, yeah. And even combine some of that color on top of my column here. So that's becoming much more close to us. I think there was a bit of pavement there, so let's give us some space there as well. Okay. There we go. Right, tiny bit of paler color here. Right, my brush is already contaminated with more darker tones. So let's bring a couple of strokes here of lighter nature. I think that window I was trying to paint is now totally gone, but that's okay. Tiny bit more here. Maybe more precise, chunky, defined strokes. Yeah, almost like little mosaic mark making. Okay, that's good. Quite like that. A little less straight, but again, suggestive. Where the column is finishing, where that space is starting between. But if we're stepping away, we can see that. Okay, And also this color could gently come on my column here as well. I think it will cool off that area. Oh, that's lovely. Anywhere else I can cool it off? Okay, just a round angle. Well, that will look quite good as well. Good. That lovely tension and that lovely warmth is together. Okay, let's just unite that shape tiny bit more. Again, tiny bit more straighter. Okay, and I think maybe a hint of that somewhere here. Again, wasn't sure about it till it's been placed, and it's looking good as well here. Or maybe whole corner. It must merge together. And I'm happy to stop here as well. Yeah, I'm happy to stop. Right, thank you very much. I hope you'll have a good time playing with your variations of color, working on the wet surface and the dry surface, working into your rhythm of line and the rhythm of color, echoing the blues, echoing the lights, echoing the warmth. So please continue having fun painting, and I look forward to seeing your final pictures. Thank you very much.